Hello everyone, I'm Alan Hyde and welcome to BARC'ing Mad, the official podcast of the British Automobile Racing Club. Now we're back for another episode, although this time we're back in the comforts of our own homes, well, kind of, after what I can only describe as a fantastic first ever live episode at Silverstone less than 2 weeks ago at the penultimate round of the Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship. Now, hopefully we'll be able to do more of those in the future. And if we do, I'm sure I'll be joined as ever by my BARC'ing Mad co-host, Ian Waterhouse. Hello, Ian. How are you?
Alan, I'm very well, thank you. And yeah, a little bit sad actually because I'm not next to you this time. We're talking from a distance. However, I'm not too sad because I'm very excited as well because in just a couple of weeks' time we do have the final round of the British Endurance Championship as well.
Hey, yeah.
I'm going
Donington
to be
Park,
there at
isn't it?
Donington. It's going right down to the wire. I know Brad Thurston, Darryl De Leon right in the mix too. It is going to be an absolute cracker. You will be able to watch it live as well at the BARC YouTube channel. You've got to tune in for that. You really, really do. You know, Aston Martin's going around. We've got Mercedes. Oh, my word. It is unbelievable. We've also got classic touring cars as well. Just a little note there too. So lots coming up, lots going on. That weekend is going to be a stormer, Alan.
So that's not this weekend, that's next weekend, Donington Park. I've been at Donington so much this year. I've been up and down the motorway to Donington Park. I was at Donington Park this weekend just gone for the penultimate round of the Bennett's British Superbike Championship. I think I mentioned on the last BARC'ing Mad podcast, they do get a bit needly with each other, don't they?
They certainly do. That's what we love about motorsport, though, isn't it?
I'm afraid I am a fan. Yeah, when you see the passion come out. I mean, maybe teammates not taking each other out of a race that are both in positions 1 and 2 in the championship, separated by half a point. Maybe that isn't the best of ways to do things, but still, it makes for jolly good entertainment. Of course, this weekend. Big weekend for BARC, big weekend for the BTCC as well, because it's our championship finale. It goes all the way down to the wire at Brands Hatch this weekend. Now, so I've got some friends coming along this weekend, and they said, okay, what's the meeting like? Never been to the finale before. So I said, okay, you need really big, thick coats. You need umbrellas. You need wellies. Have you seen the forecast for this weekend? 23 degrees and sunshine. No, it's a beautiful forecast for the weekend. So I've got a feeling it's going to be a quite unique weekend because the weather forecast is great. We've got 2 top drivers, world-class drivers, slugging it out for the championship in the reigning champion, the outgoing champion, Tom Ingram and Ash Sutton, who was a guest of ours on the last BARC'ing Mad podcast.
He was, yeah.
And I need to make a mention of that because a couple of people came up to me on the Saturday at Silverstone and said, do you know what? That interview that you two did with Ash was so different and unique and insightful. And I have to say, I rather felt that when we were talking to him. It was a really good feel. He relaxed into it, seemed to be enjoying it, and was giving us so many sort of little insights into things that we wouldn't otherwise know. You know, on the simulator, saying his 3 times table. That was a revelation to me. That's the kind of thing that top drivers are going through all the time. And what are the chances we'd find that out if we weren't speaking to him in a podcast?
Well, we talk about top drivers, Alan. I think that's why I never made it as a race driver anyway, because I don't think I know my 3 times table, let alone being able to do it whilst driving on a sim.
Did you try to become a racing driver?
No, in all honesty, I have had the pleasure of going out a few times. I won't say in what, because everybody will just laugh at me. But I've been out on track a few times, and I think I've realised a few times when I've gone out with proper race drivers, just as a passenger, and the way that they go into corners, I'd realised then that I can't do it. I just don't know how they brake so late. I don't know how they've got the guts, shall we say, to put that much faith in 4 wheels and the tyres and their ability. No. And I realised then, do you know what? I don't have it. I'm never going to be good enough to be a race driver.
Nor do I. I drove I was talked into, so I've driven a race car once. It was a Formula BMW car. It was around the Cartagena circuit in Spain. I was arm twisted into doing it by Mario Tyson, who was the boss of BMW Motorsport, and Sebastian Vettel, who had just won his first world championship. So I couldn't hardly say no. And there is a great picture on my Facebook page of the team owner of the car wagging his finger at me when I came back to the. I didn't know I was changing gear wrong. I didn't think you needed a clutch once you got going, but still, apparently you do. so
You certainly. I tell you what, you also need. You do need. Talking of guts as well. Don't forget, it's the trucks coming up at Pembury as well.
Oh yeah,
season finale. Ryan Smith going for the title there.
That's this weekend, isn't it? This weekend.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. I won't be there unfortunately, but certainly want to keep your eye on that one as well.
So all of that coming up in and around the British Automobile Racing Club, including members of the British Automobile Racing Club will have dropping through their letterboxes in the next couple of days the New Look magazine. It's called Apex. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, if I just randomly go through the magazine, just flicking through the pages, I'm sure very soon I'll find. I can't find it now.
I think there's a picture of you, isn't there? You and me.
Oh, there might be.
Yeah,
no, I think there might be. Yeah, funny that.
Sorry about that in advance, everybody.
It's a great magazine. Seriously, there's a good read. There's another picture on the other side, but brilliant magazine, and it's going to be dropping on members' letterbox through letterboxes this week.
Brilliant. Can't wait. I cannot wait to see it.
It's really
I
nice.
haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it. They have only just landed because I'm not at home. I'm actually at the home of the British Automobile Racing Club. In fact, I'm in the chief executive's office. I'm in Ben Taylor's office. He's not here, incidentally, but I am, and this is just part of the library of the Thruxton and BARC library here.
It suits you well, Alan. It suits you well.
Do you think I could have a library in the West Wing at home? Do you think so? Yeah.
Oh, well, I already thought you had, and in the North and South Wings as well of your house.
The only problem is that wall of books. See, they're all different sizes, different colours. I don't like that. This here, absolutely fine. All the same size, all the same lettering, all the same colour. Perfect. But that would upset me, that wall.
So all those colouring books you got at home, Alan. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'd have to colour them in. You're quite right. Now, if you're new to the BARC'ing Mad podcast, then let me give you a little snippet of what we're all about. Every fortnight, we come together for a good old chat about all things motorsport, focusing on the latest events inside the club and some of the biggest topics in the sport from around the world. We are also joined by a host of fantastic guests. And today's episode is no different. We'll be welcoming two aficionados of broadcasting. It's a commentator's dream today. James Allen, of course, formerly ITV's voice of Formula One, and an up-and-coming voice. He's been the voice this year of the FIA Formula 3 Championship. He's also dipped his toe into Formula One this year as well, and that's Chris McCarthy, somebody I've worked with in the BTCC.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to talking to both of them. Just sit back and listen to what I've got to say. It's going to be fascinating. Every episode is fantastic, isn't it? The guests just keep on coming. I can't wait to speak to both James and Chris. But before that, it's time to hear from our fantastic partners. As you can save big on fuel with BP Fleet Solutions UK. Yes, BP Fleet Solutions keep on delivering huge value for BARC'ing Mad listeners. They're now offering 8p per litre off fuel at 1,200 UK petrol stations across the United Kingdom. This exclusive offer for BARC members and BARC'ing Mad listeners saves you 8p per litre of standard and premium grade fuels, and there are also significant savings to be made on electric charging too. This really is an offer exclusive to BARC'ing Mad podcast and not to be missed.
And with that all out of the way, I think it's probably about time we got stuck into things, because this is the BARC'ing Mad podcast.
Yes.
Now let's switch gears and introduce our first guest onto this week's podcast. He's been a commentator for both ITV and the BBC with Formula One, and is currently the president of Motorsport Business and F1 Liaison of Motorsport Network. I'm really pleased to welcome to the BARC'ing Mad podcast, James Allen. James, thank you so much for joining us. There is so much that I'd like to talk to you about. And I guess we start with your role at Motorsport Network. What are you doing now?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, Alan and Ian. And yeah, so what I do nowadays, I work with Motorsport Network, which is the largest independent media platform, digital media platform in the motorsport world. And we have websites in 15 different languages. Obviously, Autosport is well known to a lot of UK audiences, both as a magazine and as a website, as the Autosport Awards as well, which is the kind of blue ribbon event at the end of every season, now in its 36th year, I think. So beavering away at organising that for December. And yeah, I work across all of that business, principally working in Formula One.
I'm going to ask you, with Ian as well, about how you first had your love of motorsport, etc., etc. But because I'm a commentator and presenter in motorsport, I'd like to first of all ask the question: how did you make the transition from being a journalist into being a commentator? Because just because you know about a sport doesn't necessarily mean to say that you can communicate that verbally.
Brian Barwick, who was tremendous sort of a mentor for me really at that phase. He told me that I was going to be taking over from Murray. And so he said, you really should go and do some proper voice coaching. And the first thing that the voice coach, who was basically normally used training actors, people, stage actors and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I sent her some tapes of our broadcasts. This is obviously when I was with ITV and I was doing the pit lane and Murray was commentating. And she said, oh my God, this guy, she said, his voice sounds like a racing engine. It goes up and then it comes down again. And she said, it's amazing how he's kind of mirrored his voice to the action. And then that was in the days, of course, when we had the V8s and they really were screaming at 20,000 RPM, and so was Murray, And so that was very interesting. But I don't think he ever did any voice coaching. I think he was very serious about his craft. He had a bunch of things. He always wanted to stand up. He had a kind of a tripod case from a camera tripod that was sort of be right in front of him. He kept his notebook on top of it that he could read things from, but also make some notes so he didn't forget. And he had all these little practices. He had a sort of a warming up routine. It was like something out of Carry On Camping. Sort of doing all this sort of thing. And yeah, he had all these techniques, and I, you do. I mean, I had a lot of that stuff that I picked up from him and from voice coaching as well, to make sure you get really powerful resonances. But his voice came from the top of his head, I learned. So it was those resonances from his nose and the top of his head that,
which is what that's what singers are taught
exactly
to do, isn't it? To come from here.
Whereas the resonance for my voice comes more from the chest. So I have to warm up the top of my head to get those sort of, but my voice doesn't go as high up as his does, or even close. I'm locked in at about 10,000 RPM. He's 20.
That's a great answer, James. Thank you, Ian.
James, it must be. We mentioned Murray Walker there. You mentioned Martin Brundle, of course. You've got to have many fond memories of working in the commentary box and up and down the pit lane. Is there anything particular that stands out for you as a bit of a wow moment?
Well, there's so many. I mean, we did, I don't know how many races we did as ITV. It was probably 250, something like that, between 200 and 250 Grand Prix. And I did every single one of them, which was pretty taxing. But I was the only person actually on the crew that did every single one of the ITV races. And then obviously
I imagine the travel was quite tough then as well.
It was, but yes, it was. But it's not like it is today, where you've got 23, 24 races. Most of that time was 17 or 18. But there's so many amazing memories. I mean, it just, our first race, in Australia, and the excitement of that in 1997, you had the excitement of what was going on with McLaren switching the cars. Then you had a Lacey who was basically running out of fuel, and the team was furiously trying to signal to him to come into the pit. And I was telling that story, and then sure enough, he ran out of fuel. You ended up with qualifying being disrupted, and you had the three fastest cars in the field, Raikkonen, Alonso, and Schumacher, coming through from the back of the field. And Raikkonen caught Fisichella, who had been leading in the Renault pretty much from the start. He caught him and passed him on the last lap to win the race. And that for me was one of the great races to commentate on. It was so exciting.
Was not 1997 as well? Was that the year Damon Hill almost won in the Arrows? Was that 97?
Yeah, 97 was exactly, in Austria. No, in Hungary, sorry. Austria, Trulli had a really good run in the Prost, also on the Bridgestone tyres, because it was all about the Bridgestone tyres that came alive in certain situations. And Damon really capitalised on that with the Arrows, and almost won the Grand Prix, but for a 50p washer that went wrong, didn't it?
Oh, tragic, isn't it? Absolutely tragic.
James, your recall of these races is phenomenal. You know, what happened, when it happened, what circuit it happened.
Don't test me too much, Alan.
I'm not
He's
going to.
building up to something here.
Exactly.
I used to do a feature on a national radio station after a touring car meeting whilst driving home. Used to pull into a services and used to do a sort of resume of the day. And I used to have to look at my notes to remember who was on the podium and therefore what happened in that race, what happened in the second race. And it only happened about 4 or 5 hours ago. So I have quite limited recall for races. I've seen a lot of races. Do you have recall for the races that you weren't necessarily commentating on? So, for example, could you talk about races that happened this year and instantly remember what had happened in each one of them?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, I think when you're that engaged in it and you're
When you're
making
there, yeah.
when you're making a lot of notes. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very much a narrative based commentator. So for me, I don't want to think that I'm there reacting to what's happening on the screen. I like to think that I've come into the race. I'm talking in the present tense. Obviously, my broadcast career is well behind me, and but I came into a race with what the narrative was. I wanted, everything's about storytelling, right? And so you wanted the viewers to be in the moment with you. You have to sort of set the whole thing up, give it the context. Why is this race significant? You know, what could happen today? You know, if that happens, then what does that mean for the championship? What does it mean for this team that have, you know, whatever it may be? So you're setting up the narratives going into the race, and then you're carrying the narratives through. And obviously things happen and things change, and you want to try and be ahead of the story as much as you can. The other thing in the BBC days, which was a really good discipline, is you do the commentary, you know, and then you have to kind of do a 30-minute sort of upsum, which you have to do in one hit for 5 Live, that then gets played in the news and gets played for the rest of the evening on 5 Live, and that's a really good discipline as well. It just teaches you to kind of crystallize the whole race in 30 seconds and what it means, and always like to throw forward as well, you know. So that's all happened. Then next is going to be this, you know, what comes next, because I think motor racing fans are very switched on, they're very bright on the whole. You know, it's a sport that has levels of complexity, and people enjoy the intrigue of those things. But if I've learned one thing about motor racing audiences, it's they always want to know what's next.
Yes. Yeah.
I imagine then for that 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix, we've mentioned it a few times, so let's go back to it. And you talk about always trying to be one step ahead. It's difficult though, isn't it, when there's so many different permutations for the championship, and it changes on the last corner as well. How did you deal with all of that?
I think by just being very measured, you know, you know what needs to happen in order. In that case, for example, Hamilton needed to finish fifth. Whatever Massa did, Hamilton just needed to finish fifth really to be world champion, or certainly if Massa won the Grand Prix, which of course he went on and did brilliantly, to be fair. So the key thing there was just to keep in mind, you know, what Hamilton needs to achieve, and the key thing there was that it had started raining in the closing stages, and the Toyotas were out of position in a way and the reason they were out of position is because they hadn't come into the pits to get off those grooved tires and get onto some intermediate tires, and the others had, and so it was really a question of whether it would rain hard enough before the end of the race for the grip to go away from those tires and for them to cool off, and the grip to go away for Glock and Trulli, but particularly Glock, in order for Hamilton to be able to catch, and Vettel, who I think he was racing with, for them to catch Glock before the checkered flag. So the main thing from my point of view was we're in these horrible sort of tin can commentary boxes that they have in Interlagos. I mean, they literally are made of metal, like some sort of old sort of billet, and the no sound deadening whatsoever. It's deafening in there. And I remember opening the back door because it was all, you know, right there. You open the back door and I could see how hard it was raining outside, because you can't really see it through the window of the commentary box. And you look at the TV pictures, but you really need to see it with your own eyes. And Brazilian rain is really thick, heavy, wet rain when it starts.
It is, yeah.
A car on running on slicks on the track in those kind of conditions, you know, at the same pace as a car on intermediates.
I remember the rain very well because I left before the end of the race. I was in a taxi going to the airport and I thought, goodness me, what's happening? I had no way of knowing what was actually happening in the race. And then I tried to avoid any television sets in the airport so that I could watch it when I got back home again. It was all a bit of a revelation to me once I got home. Can you describe to me, James, while all of that was going on, how many people were talking in your ear while you were trying to disseminate what was happening in the race?
Well, obviously you've got Martin talking, and then you throw to the Ted or Louise or whatever in the pit lane. But that's normal. I wasn't talking at the same time, obviously, when they were talking. The only other person that talked in our ear was the director, Kevin
So
Chapman.
you didn't have open talk back. You didn't have everybody talking to you all at the same time.
No, I mean we kept the talk back open so they could talk to us whenever we wanted. So,
yes, yeah.
but there was sort of discipline was there was only ever one person who communicated the messages to us. A bit like a race engineer is
yes.
pretty much the one person that communicates to a driver. So it's controlled. We had Mark Hughes, a very well-known journalist. He was always in the commentary box with us, and he didn't talk to us, but he had like a notepad. And so it was an extra pair of eyes, really, in the commentary box always that he'd spot things, and if we hadn't noted them. So between the three of us, we didn't miss too much.
You didn't miss a thing, and you've got the awards to prove it as well. It is an iconic moment of not just of Formula One television, but of television as well, wasn't it? Because it's all the drama unfolding in front of your eyes, and you having to tell the story as it happens.
Yeah, it is pure drama, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a race like that, it's the sort of, they say sport is the only true drama that most people get in their lives. It's otherwise you have to kind of get a fiction writer or a screenplay writer to create drama, but this is genuine, and sport can really throw that up. I mean, we've had some fantastic races, haven't we, over the years, and with some amazing conclusions. Nigel Mansell getting past Senna when he made that mistake in Hungary, or getting past PK, on was it the penultimate lap at Silverstone? Just so many amazing, dramatic moments, and that definitely is right up there with them. I mean, I watch the races with great interest, and I take a great interest in the strategic decisions. That's always been an area of the sport that I really have enjoyed, and you talk about Abu Dhabi 2021. That's it. We could talk for hours about what happened there, and it's not
Yes,
it's not just what happened on that afternoon. You have to go back earlier in the season for some of the things that happened with the race direction. What happened in Belgium, for example, and just the whole kind of loss of confidence around race direction and one thing and another. But for me, the most surprising thing was that the obvious thing to do when Latifi hit the wall with 6 laps to go, or whatever it was to throw the red flag. Because then you neutralize the race, and then everybody comes back to the pits. Everybody would have put on a set of soft tires, reformed in a grid, and you would have had a 5-lap sprint basically for the World Championship.
They had precedent for that
year.
They
had a precedent for it during that weekend.
Yes,
people had hit that wall in practice and they'd red flagged it. So it was just the obvious thing to do, and it's a great shame, what happened after that.
But that would have engaged an audience as well, wouldn't it? I mean, looking at the growth of
bit.
Formula One, I mean, it's remarkable they didn't do it, but the growth of Formula One across social media, streaming services, traditional media, perhaps they missed a bit of a trick there. But would you say it's going in the right direction generally, globally?
The sport, Formula One?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly more popular than at any time I've been in Formula One now for 33 years, and I've never seen it more popular than it is now. I was lucky, I think, when I started in 1990 that it was cool in those days. Senna, Prost, Mansell, it was.
What a time to go in, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that late 80s, early 90s, it was electric. These people were sort of superstars, and it was visceral, it was exciting, it was dangerous, and it was cool. And it was cool in the 70s with Mario and Emerson and Jackie and that sort of thing. And it wasn't cool for quite a long time after that, I would say, and certainly through the 2000s and the 2010s. And I think Liberty Media have come in. I think they had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do. Opening up the social media freedoms for the teams, for the media, for the circuits, for the drivers, to create engaging content was a start. And then obviously Drive to Survive had a huge effect on it. And then on top of that, you've also had this generation of TikTok whole different kind of group of people there that are coming to watch the Grand Prix. It's not like 50-year-old blokes with their sort of retro anoraks on. This is like 18 to 22-year-old girls, and millennials, and it's just like it's a totally different audience, which is really encouraging, and you hope it's going to last because it's I think the other thing that is exciting about it, which makes me think it will last, is that when I was sort of commentating for, let's say, on ITV, I would reckon that most of the audience would know probably 6 of the drivers, something like that. You've got your people who are really into it; they know the field, but you'd probably general audience would probably know 6 best known drivers. Whereas now they know all of the drivers. They've all got their own stories. They've all got their own social media. They've got
They're
their
all
own
superstars now, aren't
narratives.
they?
Yeah, exactly.
And the
So
reserve drive, the test drivers are all known.
and the
as well.
team bosses. I mean, Gunter Steiner
Yes.
gets mobbed. Wherever we go in the world, he gets absolutely mobbed now. And so does Christian. So does Toto. It's amazing. I mean, Toto in Singapore, just coming out of the team hospitality, just walking across the paddock into the garage, all the paddock club and everything, and they're all screaming and shouting, and
Wow.
it was like Paul McCartney or something had come out, and it was or Taylor Swift, and it was Toto Wolff, So that's how the sport's changed, and the paddocks now are just full of people, and everybody's excited, and obviously the sponsors are pouring in as well, so there's plenty of money in the sport.
In a really good place. Well, we're talking about modern day Formula One. What about our 2 highlight stars of Formula One at the moment, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen? How do you think, James, they stack up against the all-time greats of Formula One?
Well, they're both right up there, aren't they? I mean, Hamilton through weight of numbers, and also because in my book he's done everything he's done without ever resorting to a professional foul. Senna was for me the greatest ever, but he wasn't above giving someone a gut punch,
Yes,
and obviously Schumacher picked that up from him, shall we say, and a few famous episodes where perhaps his reaction to an adversity wasn't the right thing to do, and Damon and Jacques Villeneuve and that kind of thing. And Lewis has never done anything like that. He's always been fair, and he's not saying the others weren't fair, but I mean there were just a couple of moments, let's say, and Lewis never done that. So for me, he's right up there. And Max is obviously a bit younger. Is he just 26, I think? So amazing to think he's got more years in front of him, but he's about to be a 3-time world champion, and will go on to win more, I'm sure. And also, I just think the whole way he goes racing just puts him right up there amongst the absolute elite. I remember the first time I saw what the fuss was all about with Verstappen was I met him when he was still in F3, and he came to Spa, and he was like 17, I think, and had a chat and one thing and another, and then I remember watching him the following year in Monaco. And one of my favourite things to do is always to go down to the swimming pool in Monaco, get one of those special tabards that allows you to go trackside, and you watch them coming through. To back corner is a real pleasure. The entry to the swimming pool is another real pleasure. But for me, the best is to stand on the outside of the first part of the swimming pool before they turn into the second part of the swimming pool, because you've got a car in a very, very small space going 130 odd miles an hour in a space that's probably not even as wide as a tennis court. It's really narrow with barriers either side, and you've got to change direction and get it into the second part of the corner. And I realized I could see how fast his hands were on the wheel.
Wow.
I mean, he's just demonstrably quicker than anybody else. It's just how quickly he caught the car and moved it and turned it into the next thing. It was just like lightning fast hands, and you just thought, okay, right, yeah. So on top of all the other things, the determination he's got, and the feel he's got, the balance, the bravery, all the usual things, he's got phenomenally fast hands. And you think, okay, this guy, I can see where this is going to go. And of course, early doors, he was crashing a bit and throwing opportunities away and all the rest of it. But that you will do if you're under that much pressure, that young, and you push yourself as hard as he has.
Exactly the same reason that I enjoy watching young Formula 3 drivers racing at Macau.
Exactly. I've done Macau many times. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Just wonderful to see these drivers. And then when you look back at the names of drivers that have succeeded at Macau, you think, oh, okay, yeah, world champion, right the way through the years. It's a road course with the barriers that kind of sorts sorts everyone out, isn't it?
It's not an easy one to win, Macau. I mean, I think the Tom's Toyota team had a way round there for a few years, so
yes,
they managed to get a few drivers through there that perhaps aren't gone on to be world champions. But generally speaking, it's a bit of a leveler, and to go there and you have to work your way through because there's also an aggregate race, and all the rest of it. So it's not an easy race to win. I mean, I really enjoy those races where they say it's a race that chooses you rather than you can go out and win it. Le Mans is one, the Indy 500 is one, and arguably Macau is as well, where you need a bit of luck, but you also you've got to be on it and you've got to be there and in the conversation when it really matters. But ultimately, the track will decide whether you're going to win there or not.
Ian, I think we need to talk about our virtual course, our virtual track that we've been building this year.
Well, yes, something very special we've been doing. In fact, we saw it in the last podcast, didn't we, up at Silverstone. James, what we've been doing, we've been building out a racetrack throughout the course of the season, been asking our guests for their favourite corner, any corner, any circuit in the world, favourite one. It gets added to our virtual circuit, doesn't it? I think the virtual circuit's actually completed. It does look a bit like a expanded Brands Hatch GP, doesn't it, a little bit? But is there a particular favourite corner for you, James, anywhere in the world? I mean, we've just been talking about Monaco. I imagine that's right up there.
It sounds like one of my old Scale X tracks when I was a kid. My dad managed to get hold of a load of second-hand track, and I remember building some crazy shapes all over the floor. So it's an interesting one. This, I mean, I've just mentioned the swimming pool at Monaco, which is a real favourite. I always enjoy standing by the side of that. Beckett's Maggots at Silverstone is obviously, world class complex of corners, and similarly they kind of copied it at Circuit of the Americas in Austin. It's a great place to watch a Formula One car as well down at COTA. But I suppose if I wanted to be a bit original, maybe come up with something that maybe other guests haven't come up with, maybe I would say was it Turn 8 in Turkey, that triple apex left-hander.
Well, that does feature on our circuit.
Oh, you've got it already, have you?
It's a cracking complex, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I always enjoy going there and just watching the drivers sort of figuring out how to get into that corner. That's a really special one.
James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. I'm not sure I've ever chatted to you for so long, but we've covered so much, and we are very, very grateful for you joining us here on BARC'ing Mad.
It's a great pleasure, Alan. Ian, lovely to talk to you, and thanks for inviting me on.
James Allen here, everybody here on the BARC'ing Mad podcast.
Right, Alan, I think it's time for another guest. And just like our previous guest, James Allen, this is also another guest from the world of broadcasting. In fact, many of you may have heard him covering the likes of Formula One, F2 and F3, among many other things this year. It is, of course, Chris McCarthy's in the house. Chris, thank you for coming on. How are you?
Thank you, Ian, and Alan as well. Thanks for having me on, first of all. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I've been really enjoying the podcast, so, great to come on and talk about the seasons we've had so far and just in general chat to you guys.
Big ticks already, Ian. He's ticked a lot of boxes
get the brownie
already.
Points out for Chris. Look, Chris, we're going to touch on your year. We've done well to tie you down because you've been very busy. But just quickly, of course, the BARC involved in club racing quite a bit here in the UK. Do you follow it at all? Have you managed to get involved in anything?
Look, I've been following BTCC very closely. I was lucky enough to work with Alan. Don't know if you'll remember it much, but at Croft in 2020.
You mentioned it, yeah. I do.
Which was...
It was COVID year, wasn't it?
So exactly.
There was only you and me listening.
There was zero pressure, and that was, of course, where we had the big incident for Bobby Thompson, but some great racing for I remember as well, and that was such good fun to be a part of it. And I've always been a big fan of BTCC. I used to go a lot as a kid. I used to love watching Ginettas, Formula Fords, things like that, and I used to love the support classes as much as I did the big classes. And being such an open paddock, it was always one I really enjoyed. So I've always been a massive fan of it and always try and get down to it when I can.
Ian, just to let you know, Chris, our favourite guest so far. He's ticked so many boxes. This is all going terribly well.
No, it is really good fun to get down to those. So I'm planning to go to Brands Hatch as well. The Brands finale, I think, is always a must go to. It's like the Autosport show, I'd say. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think
This
the
weekend?
Sunday at Brands
Wow.
is definitely a must go for any British racing fan.
Well, apparently, Chris, the weather is going to be fantastic this weekend. Normally, it's drizzly, it's cold, it's misty for the final race and dusky. But this weekend, someone told me this morning, 23 degrees is the weather forecast for this weekend. Don't get too excited. Don't take the ombre solaire quite yet, because the weather forecast has been pretty wide of the mark for most of this year. But to have a nice weekend for the finale would be lovely for the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Some champions still to crown. We want to do it in some sunshine.
So, Chris, let's kick off with motorsport and your interest in it. When did it all start? How old were you?
I was just sort of coming into my teens. I was a football player as a kid, like I think most, like a lot of kids. That was what I wanted to do. But a friend of mine had a kart, and I just liked the sound of it. He took me down to Waterhouse to have a go in it, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. I only did one lap, but then we found a track called Revolution Karting down in Bow in London, electric karts, and I just remember going out on the track for the first time. My visor was slightly open, the wind coming into my visor, and I don't know, being in control of your own devices, I guess, and rather than being as part of a team in football or cricket, like which I used to play as well, I think having full control over what you were doing and being fully responsible was what I loved most, as well as that speed. And I was probably about 13 from then, and that was when I just completely fell in love with the sport. And from there, after I think I was racing there or going there every Sunday for about a year, and then I started to go, I want to take this a little more seriously. So we started to find ways I could do that, and started to find a race team and go racing club level and then national level.
So where did it go from there then Chris? What sort of, did you want to be a commentator, or was the goal always to try and be a race driver?
It was always to try and be a race driver. I started racing at a track called Wilton Mill, which is right near Silverstone, with a team called LT Motorsport, and I raced at that track, and Shennington as well, which is in Banbury, and I did some stuff at Kimbolton as well, and we did a year of club racing, then went and did a championship called Formula Kart Stars, which had a big involvement with F1. I did 2 seasons doing that, and we got top 10 in 2010, and then I got onto the MSA Academy, which is now known as the Motorsport UK Academy.
Let me stop you there for a moment, Chris.
Sure.
Did I therefore interview you on the Formula Kart Stars stage at Autosport International? Because I used to work on that stage and interview all the little youngsters.
I'm not sure I was ever actually on stage. Actually,
disappointing.
But I did work on stage for them at a later stage.
Did you?
Doing exactly that? Yeah, I was thrown in to interview Will Stevens, and I was absolutely terrified.
Really?
I got the team there. I got his team wrong. I actually got the team he eventually went to. So I sort of full circled it back and said, I just expected he was going to that team.
Well, I did some media training for Will Stevens many years ago when he was climbing the ladder, and I always told him, don't let a presenter off. If they get something wrong, give them hell.
Oh no! Oh, he laughed it off. He was like, he could see I was very nervous, and I'd just been thrown into this. But no, I did that for 2 years, and then got into the Motorsport UK Academy, and that was great. For me, that was where we learned about other areas of the sport, like broad dealing with media, physical training. Media, everything like that, everything that you need to be an athlete. And I was one of the 5 drivers that made the Driver of the Year finalist, which was a real privilege for me. Wow. And then I started testing with Nick Tandy in Formula Fords, and that was the plan, to go and race with JTR. We were just trying to find the budget at that stage. During the 2012 season, I did Super 1 British Kart Championships racing KGP, which were monster go-karts designed to bring the best in the country together. And it was that point during halfway through that season that I was forced to stop. But yeah, up until that point, it was to be a racing driver, be it single-seaters or sports cars. But sadly, health issues meant I had
so it's quite clear then. It's, I mean, talented race driver, outrageously talented commentator. I mean, Chris, is there anything you can't do? Because we're actually connected on LinkedIn, so I see all of your posts and everything that go out, and I see you here, you're there. It's quite remarkable the year that you've had. When was sort of the big break? When did you look at it and think, do you know what, I can really make a go of this?
In terms of commentating, it wasn't something I ever really wanted to do. It kind of just happened. I was diagnosed with epilepsy basically August 2012. At a racetrack, I was at Wilton Mill when this happened.
Wow.
I had an epileptic seizure at the track. Thankfully, there's a lot of medical crew wherever you are, be it a kart track, as you know, club level, Formula One. And I woke up in the ambulance and was told that, you're not going to be able to drive a car for a year. I just got my driving license at that point.
Wow.
And I was told you're not going to be able to race for at least 5 years. And I was only 17 at the time. And that was my racing career, in my eyes, completely taken away from me. And I was just starting college doing TV and film at the time. I'd taken a year out of school, and the only thing I enjoyed about school towards the end was media, in all honesty. So I took on a TV and film course. For the first month, I was a pretty miserable kid, in all honesty, because I had just been told that racing was not for me. I wasn't very good on the mechanics side of things. And I went back to Wilton Mill the next month to thank the medical staff and my team. And it was as I was leaving the track, I sort of looked back at it and said, well, that's maybe the last time I'll ever be at a racetrack. And on the way home, funnily enough, I said to my dad, look, I'm at a college now doing TV and film. Our end of year project was to do a live production. I had access to cameras and editing suites. And I said, why don't I go to Wilton Mill and film the races? They never filmed any races there. I was a 2-time champion at the track, and none of my races I can ever watch back. And I found that quite sad, really. And I thought that, well, these drivers, let's give them a chance to be able to watch this back. So I took the idea to my college. They loved it. I took the idea to Wilton Mill. And November that year, 4 months after my seizure, or 3 months even, I was back there with a camera crew, with cameras from college, and we filmed it. We called it WMKC TV, and we called it Rolling Start Productions, actually, because kart races always Rolling Start. And we put cameras around the track. I mean, the first meeting was my mate forgot to press record the very first race.
Of course, they did.
Don't forget to do that. And he was at Christmas Corner, it's called, which is the big overtaking, was the hairpin on the circuit. But no, it was great. I had my best mate with me who's worked in TV, still does, and mates from college, and the track loved it and said, we'll pay you to do this for the whole of 2013, and that's what we did. And so we went back 2013 and filmed the whole championship.
That's pretty resourceful of you, Chris.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was great. We didn't make much money, but it was. I had everyone at college saying, "Can I come?" Because it was a way for them to get their coursework done, basically. But it was 5 races into that. It had no commentary for the first 5 times we did it. There was no commentary, and my dad said, you need commentary on this, because it's too quiet. And I was going to get a karting commentator to do it called Henry Baudet, who did Formula Car Stars.
Good on
Henry. And I didn't know him, but I was going to ask him to do it. But my dad said, you should do it. He encouraged me to do it. So I sat in my living room and I recorded it about 5 times, probably the first time. And I did it. And and I then actually enjoyed the commentating more than the filming.
Did it come easy?
I think so. Yeah, it did. When I was at racetracks, I used to love watching the other races. I didn't sit in the truck going through data. I used to love I used to try and pick out a driver in the middle of the pack. And I used to do this with Formula Fords and Formula Renault, pick out a driver and go, they did, they seemed good in practice. I think they're going to really come fly. And I just watched that one driver the whole race and see them. Shennington turn 2 is right by where you stand as a driver when you're going out the next race, and just watch them making moves every lap, and then be pretty proud of myself if they'd come through the pack. So I used to like just picking out drivers and trying to find ones. I remember seeing Lando Norris, my first ever British Championship race, my first Formula Kart Stars race, and he came through the pack absolutely flying, and I became a big fan of his after that. So, but yeah, I think the commentating thing, going back to that, I think it did come fairly easy. But yeah, I was eventually then thrust into doing it live when my college ended, because I just loved it.
What happened next then, Chris? You went from filming, obviously, at Wittermill. It obviously went a bit further from there. You'd done a couple of years of filming there. What was the next step? How did you move into things like Virtual Le Mans and Super Formula to World Endurance Championship and Formula One?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I took the idea to Wilton Mill when we couldn't. When I finished college, like, you know, I can't film anymore because I don't have the access to cameras. But why don't I commentate live on the PA system so people can hear it? So I went down the first race after my college, and the PA system wasn't working because I don't think they'd been used. So, but I just kept commentating anyway. I thought it was working, and you know, the guys were going around trying to fix it, and it was just my luck that. The guys from PF International, I don't know if you know that racetrack, it's the biggest one in the country. It's hosted the World Championships. The guys from there happened to be stood in the room and were listening to me. And they said, look, Henry Baudet is stranded out in Barbados, can't get back to do kart masters next week.
Poor little lamb that Henry was.
I know. He was out there helping kids on a project he does over there, but he can't get back. And we have the biggest race in British karting called Kart Masters, where you fight for your GP plate. It's been won by Lewis and George. And they said, you know, have you done this live before? And I said, yes, I have. And they said, okay, well, come down next week and you'll commentate live. And I said, oh, okay. And that was where it started, really. I was absolutely terrified. For the first 15 minutes, I said nothing. And then I had to just get going with it. But, you know, we had a lad called Cian Jewis go from the pit lane and win that year, which was one of the best drivers in the history of the event, and I loved it. I honestly just fell in love with it, and I thought this is what I want to do. And then my goal really became there was a karting commentator called Ken Walker, and he was one of my idols when I started, and I wanted to try and follow in his footsteps. I know he did the superkarts a lot, and he did the FIA championships and things like that. So the goal for me was to try and make it to that. And it took a few years, you know, doing national stuff and then eventually European, and it moved quite quick. But 2018, I became the FIA Karting European Championship commentator, which was a big step for me. And it was after that, then it obviously moved into cars, but that was a really big.
As far as I remember, for Ken, he used to always have his wife with him, and she would spot things and bash him quite strongly in order to focus his attention on something that was happening.
Yeah, she did, and she helped do the lap count, the sort of lap counting as well. As the guys were coming across the line, she'd write down the numbers.
That's right.
So yeah, she had two jobs to do. I think one would needed more attention than the other, and that was keeping an eye on Ken.
Nice people, really.
But he was a great guy. I got to meet him eventually. But the other thing I did love was F2 and F3. Back then it was GP2 and GP3. I loved listening to Will Buxton, and I loved then listening to Alex Jakes. And my big goal was to make it there. And I thought in the early days, I could hopefully get there next year. But it was a long road to get there, of course. But I really appreciated being in the karting paddock when I did. I mean, the 2018 FIA karting paddock is the F3 grid now, basically. So it's all the same drivers. So it was really cool seeing them back then and then seeing them now. But it was all, you know, things being thrown at you one year after the other. It was just next year I'll try and do this and then this, and it kind of went from there. Really.
I imagine then, Chris, you have to be quite versatile, don't you? I mean, this year alone, obviously F1. I mean, you were doing Formula One Kids in Singapore, is that right?
Yes, yeah, no. So we did it from Biggin Hill. That was a really good opportunity. I'd been commentating Formula 3 and Porsche Supercup, and I got to do the Formula 2 at Silverstone. And then, they said, you know, do you want to have a crack at doing F1? So I was like, yes, that wouldn't be bad. And that was, commentating the Singapore Grand Prix, doing F1 Kids, which went out on Sky Sports. And
sorry, what is that? I've seen it, but
so it's basically we have the F1 Kids are Scarlett, Zach, and Braden, and I'm there commentating with them, and it's an alternative commentary essentially. Right. If you can listen to David Croft and Martin Brundle as you usually do, or you can press the red button and listen to the F1 Kids essentially. So it's that's kind of the idea of it. It's good fun, you know. They enjoy themselves doing it. But for me, it's just really letting them, you know, they're the real stars of the show. For me, it's just being there to monitor it, to guide it, I guess. Yeah. So that's the whole idea of it. But it was really good fun, and my first time ever doing F1, and I absolutely loved it.
So what was the the break for you, if you like, Chris, to become part of the Formula One family? There must have been a moment and a specific happening.
I'd say, it started with I got a break to do Formula and a Euro Cup in 2019. It came really last minute, as I'm sure you've both experienced, call on Wednesday, on a plane on Friday kind of job. And that was, Oscar Piastri won that weekend. I thought, this is it, Formula, single seaters is what I want to do. And the next year I got to do Euro Formula, and then the next year Formula Regional. And I think Formula Regional for me was my big break, the Formula, everyone calls it FRECA, Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. And off the back of doing a season of that, I got approached by F1 to then in 2022 come in and fill in some gaps
there.
for them.
Pause there for a moment. You say Formula One contacted you. How did they contact you? Email, text message? Right.
Yeah. They reached out to me. Essentially, I got an email from them. I absolutely lost it.
I was going to say, I want to know the feelings when you got an email like that.
Yeah. I absolutely lost it. My sister. I was at my sister's and I was like shaking. I was like, I cannot believe F1 have just messaged me, and they're like, "Oh, we just want to have a chat with you about maybe commentating with us." And I was like, a dream for me. That was a dream come true. It was what I'd been chasing ever since I started doing all of this. And I just couldn't believe that I'd actually received that. It's got the F1 graphic at the bottom of the email, and I was like, really?
Cool as it gets,
I must have gone. I had to go on LinkedIn and check that this person was real, which they were. So, but yeah, I couldn't believe it. I'd had some advice from people at F1 previous to that, and it was just a surreal experience. I had to call my dad straight away. He'd been a massive supporter to me since I started, and then I remember sitting down like where I am now and having a meeting with them and having a chat with them about it, and they said, "Yeah, we'll get you into Porsche Super Cup at Monaco." And I thought, wow, okay, that's going to be crazy. And then, and then we'll go from there, sort of thing. And then next thing, I was taken into Biggin Hill for the Monaco race. A bit of a weird one because they don't actually, back then anyway, they didn't really have control of the production, so it was a bit of an empty studio for that. But yeah, it was great being taken in there for the first time. I couldn't believe where I was. It was unbelievable experience, and one I'll never forget. But I just remember going on air for the first time, and they're like, "You're on," and I was like, "Okay, all right, start now, do I? Okay, yeah, all right, let's go. This is it." And it was absolutely crazy, but an amazing experience. And then that clearly went well because I got asked back to do Formula 2 at Silverstone, and that was another one where it was, unbelievable when they sort of said you might be free that weekend. I was like, I'll check the diary, but yeah, I think I can squeeze you in. yeah. No, and that was another one which was an unbelievable experience. And then it was 3 F3 rounds, and then I got invited back this season to end up doing 7 rounds.
First time working with Formula One management, and that time when you went to do that first ever race with them. I speak to drivers before a race, and obviously they're nervous, but as soon as the lights go out, that's it. They're just laser focused. Was it the same for you? Were you walking in there thinking, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous about this." But then as soon as they're like, "Right, you're on air," you just switch and go into a natural flow. Was that it for you?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, Porsche, I did. You do by yourself, so that was a good one to start with. I think Monaco's quite a bit follow your leader race, so it was quite a good race to start off with. And then F2 I did with Tom Gamer, who I've known very well for a few years. So he's been a big help for me as well over the years, and that was really nice to have his company on that. And once we got going, it just felt like I was doing a karting race, or Wilton Mill karting race, for example. It just, you get really relaxed into it, and you forget you're in an F1 building behind you. You just sort of think you're in that commentary box, the race is going on at Silverstone, and I guess it just feels like another race, and you almost have to force yourself to treat it like that, otherwise it will just get a little too much. But obviously when you come out and see the facility they have there is unbelievable. You sort of think, oh wow, I was just doing this with all these people watching and listening. That's crazy. but yeah, once you start, yeah, I guess that all sort of goes away, and now it's I'm definitely a lot more comfortable walking in. But the first time I walked in the F1 building and got my pass,
Do you still have that first pass? You
thought
didn't have
they've
to
got the
hand
wrong
it back.
person.
You've got it framed somewhere.
Again.
With down there, you sort of hand it back in every time you leave. But yeah, I did kind of want to steal one.
Of course you did.
yeah.
So you've been covering
yeah.
FIA Formula 3, Formula 2 this year.
Yeah.
Chris, you must be able to pick
yeah.
out a few stars of the future who is destined to definitely make it to Formula 1 and be successful there as well.
I mean, I think Ollie Behrman is the obvious. If I'm looking at the British drivers, Ollie Behrman, 100%. I think I've known Ollie since he was sort of 8 years old in karting, and he's been fantastic ever since then. It's not just his results on track, but he's a very calm character off it as well. He has a smile on his face. I remember when he was doing F4 once, he was under a lot of investigations, and for no real reason, to be honest. But he took it with a smile on his face, and that for me showed that nothing could really bother him too much. He can just take things as it comes to him, and he's naturally just a very good athlete, I guess, in that sense, mentally and physically on the track. So and that lap he did at Baku with the wheel facing the other way, I think said it all. So him definitely. Taylor Barnard, who's up for the Young Driver of the Year award. Genza hadn't won since Yuki Tsunoda in 2019. So for me, Taylor's a real superstar. He won everything in karting. Nico Rosberg, actually, he was Nico Rosberg's first karting driver back in 2018. So he had he was spotted from big talents early on, this year he's driven out of his skin in a Genza car, which didn't really deserve to be anywhere near the front. No, the team haven't really been anywhere near there since 2019, and he put the car on the top step. So for me, that was fantastic. And then if we're looking down F4, Freddie Slater, who you'll both be familiar with. I mean, Freddie won everything in karting, everything. And it was no real surprise to the karting community when he jumped in. And I think the most impressive thing he did was when he went to Euro 4, the European F4 Championship, pulled it in his first qualifying session and won his second ever race. And he's going to be in F1. It's only a matter of time for me.
So you're going along to Brands Hatch this weekend, a BTCC fan and supporter. What's going to happen in our championship then?
Oh, I mean, I thought the drives from Ash and Tom were absolutely fantastic. I think Ash, that's the race where he charged through race 2, I think it was. I think that won him the champ, or at least put one firm hand on the championship. You can never say anything is over until it's over at Brands. As the light fades there, strange things can happen at the Brands Hatch GP circuit, as we all know. I think I'd like to see him do it just because I think he deserves it. That said, I think Tom has done a fantastic job, but I think Brands can always throw up some surprises. Who knows? I mean, we had a surprise pole sitter at Silverstone. We might see another this weekend. Strange things happened on the formation lap. We might see more. I just think overall it's usually where everyone throws everything at it. I know we've got drivers coming back in, new faces this weekend, new teams being announced for next year. And I think everyone throws everything at Brands, don't they? And I can't wait to see who takes those last wins. And for the drivers not fighting for the championships, it's really just getting one last podium or one last result. So I was happy to see Aaron Taylor Smith as well, and Andrew Watson get
you do properly follow it. Well done. This is great. This is
great. Yeah. I've known Aaron for a while, actually. I remember testing his karts when he used to have those. So,
so Chris, where are we going to see you for the rest of 2023? Then am I going to be able to turn on Sky Sports Formula One and switch over to Formula One Kids again?
I'm not too sure yet, honestly. I hope so. I've got the rest of the Freca season. We've got Zandvoort next week, and then we go to Hockenheim, which will be very special. They haven't raced there at that level since the Formula Renault Euro Cup days when Oscar Piastri won and Victor Martins took his championship. So yeah, I think that's a really special track. I think it's missing from the support categories.
It's a wonderful circuit, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think it's good for Freckers going back there with the push to pass system as well, which I don't know if you guys know too much about, but they get to use that 5 times in a Frecker race throughout. So a bit like BTCC, where they get that 5 times in a race. So yeah, that's going to be really cool for them to use that round the long sweeper towards the hairpin. Yeah, I can't wait to see that in action. And yeah, then we'll see what else comes in, I guess. That's the exciting thing with what we do. Sometimes offers can just come out of nowhere. So yeah. But I'll look forward to a bit of a break.
It's been a busy year for you. Just before we do let you go, Chris, I know, as we said, you are a busy man and you want to get yourself to Brands this weekend, of course. But anybody watching or listening to this BARC'ing Mad podcast and is an aspiring commentator or broadcaster, what advice would you give them?
I'd say, I'm sure you both agree. I think if you want to start by maybe creating your own opportunities. The other ones just sadly don't exist. So get down to your local kart circuit or car circuit. I'm sure there is one that does not have a commentator. Maybe has never had one, but would love one if you suggested the idea to them, like I did to Wilton Mill. There's plenty of other people that have done similar. I know Duncan Vincent did something similar, I think up in Knock Hill, for example. And he's done very well since. So if get down to your local circuit, get down to your local kart circuit, suggest the idea, and if there's one there, just tag along and see how it all works. And maybe when that person needs to nip off to another job, you can step in as cover. Practice as well, and then always remember you can improve. I mean, after my F1 Kids broadcast, I sat down with my notebook and made tons of notes on how I could improve it. So just always remember to be your own worst critic, if you like, and that can be very hard at first, but there's always ways to improve. Man City go out training every. Ash Sutton will always get in the truck and do his data because he knows there's a way to find an extra 10. So that's not me comparing myself to Ash Sutton. That's just trying to find a way compared to BTC. I used to race Ash, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, he literally drove over the top of me once at Kim Bolton. So I'm calling him out for it on the front. He didn't mean to, but he won the race that day, and I was on pole, and
wow.
I'm still not over
bitter.
it. So I'm going to use.
Make sure you tone that if you see him this weekend.
Absolutely am. I will. I will take the opportunity to. I used to race Ash Hand as well, and I remember catching up with him at a race recently. So I will absolutely call him out for it. So please do the honours, Alan, on stage if you get the chance.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll bring you head to head. That's a great story, Chris. Yeah, brilliant.
I'll be waving somewhere from the crowd.
Well done. Good.
But yeah, that would be my ideas, and reach out for help and advice to anyone out there.
Brilliant stuff. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the BARC'ing Mad podcast. We really, really do appreciate it. It's been lovely talking to you. Enjoy Brands Hatch at the weekend as well, won't you?
Thank you. Yeah, I hope to see you both there. Look forward to it.
Chris McCarthy, everybody.
Well, Ian, sadly, that's all we've got time for on this edition of BARC'ing Mad, but I've got to say it has, as it always is, been a great episode.
Yeah, you're not wrong there, Alan. But before we go, there's still time to tell you about our fantastic sponsors, BP Fleet Solutions UK, who allow you to invest less on fuel and more on winning. The BP Plus Fuel and Charge card can be used at 3,400 locations. And don't forget, the card can be used by anyone. So, if you're filling up the team trucks, heading to a circuit as a spectator, or aiming for victory on track, there's a savings to make on standard and ultimate grade fuels.
And if you haven't signed up for the BP Fleet Solutions card yet, then head over to bp.com/BARC, where you can find all the information on this exclusive offer. And if you need help, you hit the callback button on the website, and a BP Fleet Solution UK team member will be straight in contact.
Now, Alan, a couple of weeks, of course, until the next episode. Where are you going to be? Tell us a story.
Well, big weekend this weekend. We are off to Brands Hatch for the finale of the Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship. Hugely stressful. I have to take my abacus, my mobile abacus, up and down the pit lane, adding up all the points, taking away all the points, doing everything I need to do. And then, obviously, at the end of the afternoon, we'll have the Champions Podium, which is the iconic shot, if you like. Parc Fermé. A champion comes back, stands on the roof of the car, and then straight over to the champions podium. A bit of a weird one last year, because as we were going in the buggy from Parc Fermé over onto the track to the podium, for the champions podium, just look over to the left. There's all these blue flashing light rescue vehicles, because Michael Crease is in the gravel trap on his roof. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll catch up with that in a minute. I've got a champions podium to do. I'm sure Creasy is fine. And there he was, out the car, absolutely fine. Champions podium, and then we found out what happened to Michael Crease. Let's hope that doesn't happen this year.
No, certainly not. Let's hope everybody gets to see the checkered flag in one piece this time. I'll be heading to Donington Park for the British Endurance Championship season finale in a couple of weeks as well. So very much looking forward to that one.
It's hard to believe we're getting closer to the end of Series 1 of the BARC'ing Mad podcast, but never fear, we've got some terrific guests still to come. The first, fingers crossed, is hard to pin down sometimes, but fingers crossed, being former Formula One and Le Mans race ace and race ace and BTCC driver as well. With that famous race, we might talk about that. Tiff Nadell on our next episode, and a friend of Thruxton Circuit, regularly runs experiences running around the circuit here at Thruxton, sideways in a BMW. So he'll have lots to talk about.
Yeah, that should be an absolute belter, certainly if we can get him pinned down. Now, just in case you didn't know, the BARC'ing Mad podcast is available to listen on all good podcast platforms, as well as the club's official YouTube channel. Don't forget, you can stay up to date with the latest news and reports from the BARC via the club's official website and its plethora of social media channels.
That's right, Ian. And given what's coming up on track, I'm sure there'll be plenty to look out for and to listen to. We'll be back in a fortnight's time, everybody, with more BARC'ing Mad fun. Thanks for listening. Great to have your company. Until then, from Ian and from myself, bye-bye.